Good news for Plaid and Reform UK, grim reading for Labour and the Tories. They're all here tonight to respond to our new poll. Welcome to Sharp End. The results are in. Plaid and Reform are leading the way. So is there a disastrous collapse ahead for Labour? And what does it mean for post-election coalition building? Plus, heartfelt tributes are paid to Hefin David in the Senedd. Hello, good evening to you. The next Senedd election is less than 8 months away and the battle for your votes is already in full swing. Tonight, a new ITV Wales Plaid Cymru poll indicates it's likely to be one of the most dramatic elections in Welsh history. Our poll suggests if the election was held tomorrow, Plaid Cymru would be the largest party, but only by a whisker, with Reform UK hot on their heels. But the Labour Party, currently in government at both ends of the M4, would suffer a catastrophic slump, with just 14% likely to back them as things stand. In a minute, I'll be asking our panel of Senedd members what this all means for their parties. But first, let's take a closer look at how the people of Wales are feeling. Labour have ruled the roost in Cardiff Bay since the dawn of devolution, more than a quarter of a century ago. But our latest poll is the clearest indication yet that this dominance could be coming to an end. Two rival forces are looking to inherit their crown. Plaid Cymru, who were in a cooperation agreement with Labour as recently as last year, and Reform UK, who only unveiled their first Senedd member over the summer. Building work is already underway here to prepare the Senedd ahead of next May's election. But the big question is who will hold the balance of power in the next Parliament? And it's the question that people up and down Wales are debating.
Plaid.
And why is that?
Because I just believe that they are the party who only care for Wales.
I'm similar, actually. I believe in Plaid. I just don't think Labour offers the options it was. I've always voted left-wing, and I don't think Labour are left-wing these days.
Reform.
And why is that?
I just agree with their standpoints on a lot of political things, including the immigration, which I know is very controversial, but I do think that the government need to stop prioritising the citizens here. Once we have fed the mouths that are currently waiting to be fed, then we can look at feeding other people off our own plates.
I'm actually going to stick with the Labour Party. The reason being that I think Eluned Morgan has run that listening thing, and she clearly seems to be sort of putting that into place. Extra funding from London. I'm hoping now that we could begin to turn the tanker around.
All eyes will be on the big names ahead of May's election, and asked how well they thought each party leader was doing, Nigel Farage came out on top, with 40% of respondents claiming he was doing a good job as Reform UK leader. The next highest was UK Lib Dem leader Ed Davey, followed by Plaid leader Rhina Pureworth. 22% of people thought the First Minister was doing well. But Prime Minister Keir Starmer's ratings have plummeted to just 15%, below UK Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch.
It's sad. He hasn't done Labour any favours. I mean, he was a lawyer. I think he should have stayed as a lawyer.
Since the election of Starmer as Prime Minister, and with the underperformance of Labour in Wales, I've become an active member of the Plaid Cymru Party.
I voted Labour most of my life, and I'm looking elsewhere now. So they're just poor.
Whatever happens, 2026 is going to be a year of change in the Senedd. The next 8 months will decide exactly how dramatic that change will be. So I suspect there's going to be plenty to talk about, and here to react to that poll are Reform UK's Stephen Senior, the Conservatives' Natasha Asghar, Plaid's Llyr Gruffydd, and joining us from home is Labour's Irranca-Davies. Llyr, if I can come to you first. I'm sure you've had a few smiles on your faces hearing the news today, but Reform have closed that gap, haven't they?
They have, yes, and that just underlines, I think, that the people of Wales have a clear choice in May. You know, they can choose which direction this country is moving in. It's either Reform or Plaid Cymru. Now, you know, that's quite a stark choice for people, and I have confidence that, you know, when the chips are down, the people will back us in even greater numbers, I think.
The choices have been made clear by the people of Wales in this poll, Stephen. Surely with all the attention on Reform, shouldn't they have topped this poll?
Well, I think it's remarkable. It's only just over a year since Nigel Farage returned as our leader. And now, here we are. The momentum is all with us. We've put on 4% in just a few months. We're a smidgen behind Plaid. We're very confident that as we head towards the elections next year, people are going to realise that a vote for Plaid is a vote for Labour. There's a long history of that, and we believe over the next few months, we are going to be the ones in the lead. 4% in just a few months now. Wait to see where we go from there.
Well, we'll dig down a little bit deeper into that voter movement and what might be happening deeper in the poll there. Let's bring Hugh Irranca-Davies in, who's joining us from home today. Hugh, we said at the top of this programme, grim reading for Labour. 14%. It is grim, right? This is a crisis.
I think it's an incredibly difficult poll for Labour and for the Labour movement. And I think one thing that we can see writ large in this poll as well is the polarisation now within opinion. I'm confident that there is actually a majority here in Wales who hold traditional Welsh Labour values, those centre-left values and left values that are to do with an approach to our society, our economy, our environment that still holds fast. But it is a wake-up call to Labour, both Welsh Labour and to UK Labour. And we need to address this by actually bringing forward those proposals, those policies, those ideas that resonate with people on the ground, that make a difference to their day-to-day lives. And I think one of the things we're guilty of is not having been good enough about reminding people about what we have done while we've been in government, what we've achieved in government, and what more we can do. And there's the test on the back of this poll.
Or is it, excuse me for interrupting, Hugh, is it the fact that people are seeing what's happening with UK Labour and they're turning away from Labour full stop?
I think there's an element, you can't take away the fact that it's been a difficult few weeks, and the period this poll was carried out during a difficult few weeks for UK Labour. And I'm not one of those people, by the way, who says a poll is a poll. We've known the challenge that is coming our way for quite some time. But what I would say to colleagues in the Labour movement, right across the Labour movement, in the week that UK Labour has been taken forward, introducing a bill to do with employment legislation to strengthen the rights of working people, the Reform voted against. There is only one party that will stand up, and it's been shown over decades for working people, and that is Labour. And we need to do better to remind people of that.
Hugh, you've talked a lot about the values and that you think people do still hold those values. But let's face it, you've got 8 months now to turn this around. Who do you target and how do you get those people back, if indeed they do exist?
I think there's a number of things we need to do, and do it with pace and with urgency. Over the last year, we've set out. I noticed that one of your respondents there talked about the listening that Eluned Morgan, the First Minister, had done and the way she'd responded. And she has. She has really focused on things like bringing down those longest waiting times. And they are coming down and down and down. And we'll keep those coming down. We're confident as we go into September and the autumn, we'll keep those waiting times coming down. We're rolling out now. We're on track to roll out women's health hubs in every health board within the whole of Wales. It's one of the great missing pieces of the health jigsaw, to focus on women's health specifically. So all of those things we need to do. But I have to say as well, our forward offer going to the election needs to excite people about the best of traditional Labour values in a new and modern setting, to make the change to their day-to-day lives.
Well, a mountain to climb, as you said, over the next 8 months. Natasha, I want to turn to you, representing the Conservatives here tonight. We've talked about 14% for Labour, but 11% for the Conservatives. It's looking pretty bleak for you as well.
It is, but at the same time, I'm not a huge believer in polls. I never have been. For me, I always say it's not over until that returning officer.
But if you were topping the poll, would you be saying that?
Listen, I've always said it. Regardless of any interview I've ever done on Sharp End, I've always said the same thing. 8 months is a very long time, and it's enough time for things. A day is a long time in politics, as we like to say. 8 months almost feels like a lifetime. And I am sure that the public is going to realise that when it comes to Plaid and when it comes to Labour, they've been in cahoots with each other for a very, very long time. Reform are the new kids on the block. They seem to be very popular, gaining momentum. But at the same time, the only party that's been collectively holding the Welsh Government to account time and time again has been the Welsh Conservatives. We've got the policies, we've got the drive, and we'll hopefully be able to pull it
Yet you haven't had a defection to Reform UK.
Yes, we have. And to be honest with you, it's one that was very much expected. And I have to say, I think definitely on my behalf and on my colleagues' behalf, it was to be honest, it's a sigh of relief that we took when
But on the day that announcement was made, people were very unsure as to who that defection was going to be. What does that say? There's lots of other people perhaps waiting in the wings to do the same thing. Are you going to be one of them?
No. I've been asked that question thousands of times, and honestly, I've had thousands of messages, calls and emails from constituents all across South East Wales saying, please will you join Reform, please will you join Reform, please will you join Reform. I'm a huge believer in listening to my constituents through and through, but this is one step that I think would be very difficult for me to take. And like I said, Reform seems to be picking and cherry-picking politicians who unfortunately are failed within our own party, so it's not a group that I would want to join.
I think
you wanted to come in.
Well, yeah, I think it's very ironic because, I mean, most of Reform members are former Conservative members. I mean, we have one on the panel here as well, you know. Reform are just the old Tories in different coloured ties, you know, and I think people are seeing through that. And Hugh mentioned that, you know, people of Wales still hold dear traditional Labour values. They may do, but the shame is, of course, that the Labour Party themselves don't hold those traditional values anymore, because otherwise Keir Starmer wouldn't have tried to, you know, cut the winter fuel allowance, you know, he would have scrapped the two-child.
The Tories in disguise, Stephen?
Anybody who's attended, any viewers who've attended a Reform Party meeting would realise 80% plus of Reform members and Reform activists have never done politics before. They've come to Reform because of the failure over many years of the main parties, the uni parties we call them. We're not all former Conservatives, and people need.
But there are a lot of them, aren't there?
And that's
there
are. His cabinet.
Yes,
in fact, we hear about somebody defecting every second day.
We would expect, you know, a good number of Conservatives to come over, and more have come over this week. I mean, the Conservative Party in Wales is facing you know, pretty much extinction if it carries on this way. It'll become a fringe party, become the Liberals. A vote for the Liberals is a vote for Labour. I have to say that when, you know, the Conservatives have not always held the Welsh Government to account, have not always held the Labour Party to account. There have been many votes where there's unanimity in the Senedd. That's got to stop, and we're determined to stop it.
OK, I know you're going to want to come back on that. Let's just hear... if you don't mind, we'll come back in a second to come back on that. But earlier today, I sat down with Dr. Jack Larner from Cardiff University to assess the poll results a little more and find out what they could mean for May's election.
It looks like a two-horse race, really, between Plaid Cymru and Reform, neck and neck. Not really much much between them at all. Labour falling even further back to a more distant third, and the Conservatives again struggling as a quite kind of anemic fourth-place party there, really. So really those parties are going to be really fighting just for, you know, the difference for a handful of seats. And then the possibility of a few of the smaller parties then as well, the Greens and the Lib Dems, possibly capturing a few seats. But really the big battle for the largest party is between Reform and Plaid.
Unprecedented to see this in a poll result in Wales, as you say, developing a trend. What more can you say about this two-horse race to be the largest party?
So what we've seen since the 2024 general election is that a huge chunk of previous Labour voters have moved, a lot of them to Plaid Cymru in Wales, quite a few to the Greens now and also to the Lib Dems, but also now about 10% of those people who voted Labour in 2024 have moved to Reform. But still, most of the movement, most of the losses are to that kind of more progressive parties, and particular Plaid Cymru. On the flip side, the Conservatives have lost, you know, most of their support, the vast majority of their support to Reform UK. And for a party like Labour, historically incredibly strong in Wales, you know, we're only just a year away from them winning, you know, very comfortably a big general election victory. They're kind of stuck, right? Are they going to chase after these progressive voters, or are they going to try and capture the small numbers but still significant numbers that they are losing to Reform? So they're really caught in a difficult place.
And you touched upon it a bit there with the issues, but how much are people voting according to the Welsh Government's record, and how much are they polling according to the UK Government's record?
Well, both governments are very unpopular. So the Welsh Government is very, very unpopular, but the UK Government now is far less popular again. Right, so now the UK Government and Keir Starmer in particular are polling around the same numbers in terms of whether they think they're doing a good job or a bad job, as Rishi Sunak was just before the UK election in 2024. So badly, basically, very, very badly. Distinguishing between the two is always difficult, especially when rhetorically they've been tying themselves quite close together at least until the last few months, right, when there has been some divisions between them. But in terms of who is the least popular, it's the UK government, but really, neither government's doing particularly well.
And for a Welsh poll, for Labour to be on that 14%, a surprise?
Yes, I mean, it's the lowest poll we've ever had in Wales, as far as we can find. We've never had a worse poll for Labour. And really, in terms of the number of seats they're looking at winning now under this new electoral system, they're really on the threshold, right, of winning, potentially 10 seats, 11 seats, 12 seats, but also just small changes now could really reduce the number of seats they're winning to just a handful across Wales. So it's not even a given that they'd win a seat in every constituency, any of these new mega constituencies. And given that there's going to be 6 seats in every constituency, the Labour Party not being able to guarantee just even one in a lot of these seats, that's a huge shock.
And that's where you get down then into the complexities of what the new voting system brings up. So if we're looking at the overall picture and also the other parties, so the Conservatives, Lib Dems, Greens, if these results were repeated in May's election, how would the parties expect to look?
So it's probably too close to tell who's going to be the bigger party between Plaid and Reform if these numbers stuck, right? Because as we've talked about with previous polls, the last seats in different constituencies are going to come down to probably a few hundred votes. And a big poll like this can't pick up those tiny numbers. So neck and neck, likely, right? It looks like Labour will be the 3rd largest party, but again, not that many seats. So really what it's going to come down to is parties working together, because no party is going to be able to win enough seats to form a majority government. So now it's about which parties are likely to work together. So Plaid, if they're the largest party, naturally have more parties to work with. They've worked with Labour in the past in some capacity, and the Lib Dems and the Greens, those voters kind of like each other. In terms of their values, they're fairly similar, easier to work with. So it's easier for them to form a majority. For Reform, really the only natural party for them to work with is the Conservatives. However, as things stand currently, right, they would be quite short of a majority. So that would be difficult. But really, what we should be looking for in the lead up to the next election is what the parties say outwardly, right, about who they will, who they won't vote for, work with rather. Because that's going to be really important for also sending a message to voters.
Jack Larner from Cardiff University, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Who the parties will and will not work with. Natasha, we spoke just now, you're saying no, you wouldn't be defecting to Reform. Would you be working with Reform?
At the end of the day, you can never say never. We understand that the way the system has been created, we've got more members coming in, like it or lump it. It's going to cost the taxpayer £120 million of their money. It wasn't a decision that we supported. In fact, I was the first one to say that we need to have a referendum, let the public and citizens of Wales decide whether we should have this expansion. But Plaid, Labour and the Lib Dems ploughed ahead with this. It's going ahead. Now, at the end of the day, it all depends on polling day, what the results are, what those numbers are. We'll have to sit down at the table.
But essentially that's a yes, the Conservatives would...
I can't speak on my party's behalf on this, but purely because we do not know what those numbers are going to be. It'll only be decided once the election is over.
Reform UK, the Conservatives will look at the numbers.
The one thing I take issue there with Jack Larner is the idea that no party can actually get a majority.
Well, we do know with the new voting system, it's far more likely to be in that situation.
We know the figures. It is perfectly possible for Reform to get a majority. With the D'Hondt system, with the constituencies with only 6 to be elected, it is possible to get a majority with below 50% of the vote. And the electorate will appreciate that, and we think we can win an outright majority. Now, actually, going back to the issue, we also didn't support expanding the size of the Senedd. But unless the Welsh people gift us a supermajority, then there's probably not much we can do about that. But be in no doubt that Reform think we can win a majority in that election next May.
Just going back to the original question, would you be working with the Conservatives? Who around this table tonight, so including Hugh in the screen there, would you be willing to work with Reform UK? We're not going to get into that.
We've made it very, very clear all the way from Nigel Farage down that we are saying that to win this election. We're not going to get in any discussions about what will happen post-election. We intend to win it and win a majority, not just become the largest party.
OK. Well, at the other end of the scale, we're talking...
Realistic and an implausible outcome, actually. You ask anyone, you're the only one I've ever heard believe that. And if you believe your own hype, then, that says...
Look at the D'Hondt system.
Yeah, well, exactly.
Go in it deep. Go into it really deep.
Well, really, really deep. So deep, nobody else has ever been there.
We need to get Jack Larner back in the room, don't we?
I think people default all the time to coalitions, this, that and the other, right?
But do you know why we're doing that? It's because of the voting system. When you heard Jack Larner say...
no party has ever had a majority in devolved Wales, and now you think you're going to get it next time. It's not going to happen.
Our message is, if you
you're
want
a Welsh
reform...
voter, you would like to know what you, in prospect, will be voting for. Who's going to team up with you?
And I honestly believe that minority government is a realistic option. The SNP showed us in 2007 that can be hugely successful. So much so that they actually went on and got a majority in the following election. So let's not just default to who's going to work with who. Yes, we need to see what the numbers are. Of course we need to. But I honestly believe that a minority government is a plausible and feasible option.
Okay,
so Plaid don't think they can win a majority. Very interesting.
Clear.
Well, I mean, come on, it's being pragmatic and realistic, and this is reform, isn't it? They shout these big announcements, and of course, once you scratch the surface, you see it's all
we've just gone up 4%. Plaid is stagnating,
and you know what? We're ahead.
Oh, we're definitely not going to get a coalition here, are we? There we go.
It's a snapshot in time. A lot can change. All I say is we're starting from the best place that we've ever started one of our campaigns, and let's hope that we can go.
I'm going to bring in Hugh, who's waiting very patiently at the end of the line. Labour is unpopular in Wales, as the poll shows, also unpopular up the M4 in Westminster. The UK Labour, that's not working either. So we have the Red Welsh Way. That was to distance Welsh Labour from UK Labour. So is that messaging not clear? Is that not getting through to people, do you think? And what can you do to change that?
I think we need to do a heck of a lot better in getting that message across. And there is a classic, clear Welsh Labour way. And it's to do with values, not just policies. It really is. And it is to do with the fact that even over the last year, since Llyr came in as First Minister, we've not only managed to turn around the longest waiting times, but we've had massive investment. We've had 65 inward investment projects in Wales. We're talking about just short of 2,500 jobs created there. We've made safe over 4,600 homes from flooding, and we have not been good enough at telling people about that. Now, there is a real choice coming up here. It is a real choice for this country, and it is between a type of politics that believes in the values of protecting people in work, protecting the environment.
Can I just pick you up there? Protecting people in work, yet our poll says that you've perhaps lost the working class. Only 23% of people in our poll thought Welsh Labour cares about the problems of working people.
Which is why I say we exactly need to ram home what we've been achieving over the last 12 months and before that as well. And also to point out the difference here. It was just this week that the gentleman in the studio from Reform's colleagues were voting against employment rights, a bill that actually takes through things such as enhanced maternity, paternity rights and protection of people in the workplace. That is the choice that is on offer. So what we'll be doing is striving to turn around these predictions, which is what polls are, and turn it into a reality of the greatest number of votes for Welsh Labour in the Senedd elections.
OK, Stephen, did you want to come in on that?
Well, I mean, Hugh talks about protecting employment rights. It's good if you've got a job. And when we look at the productivity in this country and the economic situation we're faced with, reform is determined to tackle that in terms of deregulation and bringing down the cost of energy. The fact that we've lost so many jobs, manufacturing jobs in particular in Wales over the last 25 years. So the idea that we'll have more employment rights, if the country was incredibly wealthy and doing extremely well, that's a luxury maybe you could afford, but we can't. Absolutely, we cannot. And we know already the jobs data today is very grim, and Wales, unfortunately, is getting poorer, and we need to tackle that.
Yeah, you do need to tackle that, but when people ask you how you're going to tackle it, Nigel Farage says he's going to send people back down the mines.
No, he doesn't.
Well, he said
you
it.
know that.
He said it.
No, he's not sending people back down the mines.
You know that's not the case. He has talked about bringing back coal mining.
Bringing back coal mining doesn't mean sending people. The impression that the left says that we send people back down the mines. We will allow coal extraction where we need it, and that's an important. It's a small but important part of our industrial policy.
Without making that diversion fully, I just want to bring in the news of the leaked report into Laura Ann Jones, finding that she used a racial slur in a WhatsApp chat. People want policies, they want values, they don't want more scandal, do they?
Well, Laura's apologised for what she said. In terms of a leak, then that process has not been finished. It seems almost ironic that a standards committee of all is actually not even following its own process. Whether that was the people on the committee or the support.
The facts in this leaked report, we shouldn't say that that's the case, or
that process should run its course. Right? The standards committee is still looking at that. Laura has apologised for what she said in the WhatsApp. It's a private WhatsApp. Nevertheless, she recognises that
sends the wrong message, doesn't it?
It's done. It can't be changed. She's apologised to it. We need to move on. But the whole report in itself, firstly, it shouldn't have been leaked. There is a process. All right, the standards committee is looking at that, and when that's published and when it's in public, happily come back, invite me back again, and I will comment on it.
OK, Stephen, thank you. Now, join us after the break when we'll be remembering the life of Cllr MS Hefin David. See you in a bit. Hello, welcome back. Over the summer, we were all shocked and deeply saddened by the death of Cllr MS, Dr. Hefin David. Hefin had represented his constituency since 2016 and in that time had become a familiar face on this programme on Sharp End, always bringing insight, passion and entertainment to our discussions. He was a friend of this programme and he will be sorely missed. We extend our condolences to his family and to all those who loved him. So let's get some reaction now from our panel to today and the tributes in the Senedd to Hefin David. Hugh, you knew Hefin well. It was an emotional day, that was clear for all to see. Tangible sadness in the Senedd today as you all return for the first time since his death.
Yeah, it was an emotional day. It's an emotional time, to be honest. None of us are going to get over this very, very quickly. I'm going to miss him dearly. I really am. On a human level, as a friend, when things were tough, Hefin was the first one to send you a message saying, hey, you did okay there, and vice versa as well. He was one of the kindest people I've ever come across in politics, and I think colleagues there sitting with you will agree that extended right across the chamber as well. He had no barriers. He had no side to him. He was what he was. He had a huge sense of humour. I got to say, lots of people have commented about him. He genuinely did. He was sharp. And I know he was a regular on this programme as well. He was quick-witted. He was funny, but he was never malicious. And I think a lot of people are going to miss him deeply. And in those moments where we'll be sitting in an evening thinking, crikey, that was a tough day, when we'd be waiting for Hefin to give us a call, that's what we're really going to miss. He was a great friend to everybody.
Yeah, I think you're right on this programme. He did have a moment as well where he presented a link and was co-presenting effectively on Sharp End. I think for me particularly, when I was filming Wales This Week just before Christmas, I did some interviews with him about his work around additional learning needs, and that's one of the things that kept coming up in the Senedd today as well, that sense of compassion. It was all about people as well as policy with Hefin.
Yeah, listen, one of the things that I really credit Hefin with is I've always taken pride in the role of a backbencher, a serious backbencher who comes in to do good stuff on behalf of their constituents and sticks at it dogmatically, will not give up on it, but does it in a way not to upset people, but just digs in. And he did that. He did that on ALN. He did that in the work on the cross-party group on haemophilia, in so many areas, so many unsung areas, so many areas that other people don't go at. He said, these are the people who need our help. And it came from personal experience as well. And that's the best sort of politician, somebody who draws on the wellspring of their own lives and their own family and their own friends and community. And if there's a lesson for all of us in these days when there is polarised politics and divisive politics, is look for the kindness, look for the generosity, look for the sincerity of trying to help others. And that's what Hefin was all about.
Thank you for those recollections. Let's bring it back to the studio. Llyr, I know you were sitting in the studio with Hefin on Sharp End not that long ago at all.
Well, the very last edition of Sharp End, just before the summer recess, he was actually sat in this seat and I was there and we were having a bit of a ding-dong, you know, and I slapped him down a bit and said, come on, Hefin, you're interrupting all the time. There's more than you on this programme, mate, you know, and, you know, we carried on in the right spirit. But the moment we were out the door, he apologised that he'd, you know, interrupted me and hopefully I didn't take offence. And, you know, that was the kind of person he was. He was just genuine and sincere. We could have our political fallouts and he'd be the first to, you know, to buy you a cup of coffee or something after. And it was just, he did politics the right way. And I think, you know, if anything in his memory, we should all try and emulate that.
And we heard that repeatedly today.
Absolutely. And the one phrase that really, I think, pretty much coined Hefin was the fact that he was so authentic as a politician. I attended his funeral, and one thing that I learned about him was that he was a true family man in every sense of the word. He doted on his daughters dearly, and that came across in the tributes. Everyone said some beautiful words about Hefin. I sadly only did one TV interview with him, and that was a very long time ago with another channel. And
we'll let you off.
I'm sorry for that one, but Llyr made up for it, I think, when he was on Sharp End. But nonetheless, he was always a pleasure to work with. He always was never shy of speaking up for his constituents. He was never shy of speaking up against his own members, especially when he felt that they were slightly out of order. In fact, there were a few issues which we raised, for example, Peter Fox's food bill, for example. He spoke up about that. He always voted Labour, but there were a lot of things that when he disagreed, you'd know about it. And I think that's a sign of a really strong, stalwart politician. And like Llyr said, everyone should emulate that when it comes to being a good politician. I think he'll be dearly missed, not just by us, but by his constituents and his loved ones as well.
Thanks, Natasha. Stephen, held in such high esteem.
I didn't know Hefin because obviously I'm not an MS, but what I can say is a mark of the man that there were people in Reform who were deeply, deeply upset when they heard that news, to the point, and one of our very high-profile activists was in tears over it. He was that well respected, and I hope that this remains, you know, a feature of our politics, that actually we can disagree on policy, but at a personal level, we can respect each other, and Hefin had that.
What a reputation and a legacy that he leaves. Well, it was an emotional day today in Cardiff Bay, the first time the Senedd had sat, as we say, since the death of Hefin David, and politicians from all parties were paying their respects.
Today we share not only the loss of an extraordinary colleague and a friend, but also the profound sorrow of losing someone who loved so deeply. A love that extended outward, shaping the way he served his community every single day. Thank you, Hefin, for showing us how to do this job with heart, with humour and with hope. You were loved, you were missed, and the world is both dimmer without you and brighter for having known you. Rest in peace, friend. You'll never be forgotten.
He was intelligent, funny, and respected across our parliament. Whilst he leaves a gap that will not be easily filled, for me, his chair will never be empty. I will still see him in it, regardless of who has the privilege to serve his community.
I am so sorry that we've lost you, Hefin, but in this Senedd and across our valley, you will be missed, and I wish you peace, perfect peace.
I do believe that we should ensure that Hefin's legacy is one that empowers people to thrive, to encourage learning and understanding, to be humble rather than conceited, and to serve rather than seek to be served.
Llyr, I will miss Hefin. I will miss my mate. Cllr and Cymru are better for his service. I know his legacy will continue to inspire those of us who have had the privilege to work alongside him and have had the privilege to call him a friend.
So maybe we can all honour him best by striving, each in our own way, to be a little bit more like Hefin. John.
Be a little bit more Hefin, and we should say there was those heartfelt tributes and also a lot of humour in the stories that were being told in the Senedd today as well. Let's chat to Adrian. Those tributes left everyone with a tear in their eye, I think, didn't they? Good evening to you.
Evening, yes, unbelievable to listen to that, and it's as one of your guests was just saying, a testament to Hefin David's character and the way that he acted. That those tributes were not only so heartfelt, but were across the party and from even people outside parties, like us here in the broadcasting world, that got to know him. You know, the number of times that Sharp End was mentioned during those tributes was amazing to hear, and not just in that, oh, it's nice to get a bit of publicity way, but just because he really, and we used to laugh about it, but he really loved coming on Sharp End. And back in the dim and distant days when I was in your chair, Andrea, he used to want to film a promo, what we call a promo. So he'd get his phone out and would try to preview what was in the programme, and he put that on social media and used to get so much flack for it. People used to call it naff and make fun of him for it, and he didn't care because it was something that he enjoyed. And as we went on, I ended up holding the phone for him, and he used to joke that I was his cameraman. So it was absolutely genuine, the things that people were saying about him in the chamber and the things that we're saying about him now.
And whether we like it or not, politics continues, doesn't it? And there will be a by-election next month. Campaigning is already underway, and it's one that could have huge ramifications for Welsh politics.
It's already a very strange and difficult by-election because of what happened and because of the reason for it happening. It's the by-election that nobody wanted. Not even the parties that are now thinking that, OK, maybe they're in with a chance of gaining it. They wouldn't have wanted it to happen in these circumstances. So that is strange in itself. It's then strange because it's happening right at the end almost of this Senedd term. And not only that, but at a time of extreme change in terms of the way that the Senedd is elected. So it could well be the last by-election, although I'm sure future Senedd members will revisit that rule, but it could well be the last by-election. And on top of all that, it's happening in the context of what's going on at a UK level. So, as you mentioned earlier on, all the criticism about the UK government and the rise of reform and the criticism of the Conservatives, all those things are happening at once. So it's a very, very unusual and potentially very difficult by-election. All I would say is I think that the three main parties, as they seem to be, our front-runner parties, Labour, Plaid Cymru and Reform UK, are in with the chance. I would never rule out Labour anyway in any election, despite what our poll is saying. But in this instance, there's a strong personal loyalty to Hefin David, and that might well carry them through. And Plaid Cymru and Reform will also think that this is their moment to show that they're on the rise too.
And what this poll says, it's developing this trend. It would have been unthinkable only a few years ago for this to be the result of a poll in Wales. We've been picking it apart in the studio. What stands out for you?
Exactly what you just said then. I mean, I've been doing this for a long time. Far too long, some would say, and things that seemed impossible even a few years ago, but certainly pretty much all of the time that I've been reporting on Welsh politics, one thing that was a given is the dominance of Welsh Labour. Now, as I said, I would never rule out Welsh Labour or Labour in Wales because they are a formidable campaigning organisation. But, and I really mean but, this is not just the first poll that this has happened. This is the second poll. It's in keeping with other polling organisations and polls across the UK. And as Irranca-Davies was telling you earlier on, it's not a surprise to Welsh Labour. They've known that this is the situation. This is what they're up against. Llyr Morgan knows this is what she's up against, and they'll be heartened to hear the interview early on with somebody from Pontypridd who said that she'd paid attention to the fact that Llyr Morgan had gone out and listened. So, that we are in unprecedented territory with that. Unprecedented territory too, because Plaid Cymru has been looking at breakthroughs, and it looked like it was coming close to a breakthrough at the beginning of devolution in 1999, but since then has felt stuck ever since then. If this poll is right and Pryd ap Iorwerth is on the cusp of becoming First Minister, whatever the difficulties of that, then that really is a massive turnaround. And then, if that's not all, to have Reform UK coming from virtually nowhere in 2021, in the last Senedd election, to being a possible contender to be the largest party. And yes, I hear all the caveats about how difficult it would be for a Reform minority government or even a government with a larger set of seats. But these things which were impossible are no longer impossible.
Adrian, as ever, it is invaluable to hear your views, and we'll be fascinated to hear more of them over the coming weeks. Thanks very much for joining us, Adrian Masters there. After the break, we'll be getting our crystal balls out and looking ahead to the future. See you in a few minutes. Welcome back to you. Well, the summer holidays are already a distant memory, particularly with the weather we've been having. Politicians are gearing up for a busy 8 months ahead of that big election in May. So with that in mind, let's see what our panel thinks will be the defining issues over the coming months. Natasha, what will the Conservatives be talking about on the doorstep, or on the digital doorstep as well, I think, these days?
Pretty much everything. I mean, I spent most of recess putting our manifesto together. I know my colleagues have been doing the same. It is going to be a very cutthroat election without any shadow of a doubt. Having been Transport Shadow Minister for 4 years, I know my policies for transport are pretty solid. I've been working on creating education focus groups, so there have been a lot of roundtables. I really do want to improve the education system here in Wales. 20% of young people leaving school functionally illiterate is just unacceptable on every level. We want to ensure that we declare a healthcare crisis here in Wales, which is so unfortunately the case, which so many people are experiencing from north, south, east and west. With regards to transport, 20 miles per hour has been my baby, as I've called it, for a very long time. That's a huge issue which is very much affecting people on the doorsteps.
You were putting education top, but that's actually quite far down in our poll of people's priorities. Does that surprise you?
It doesn't, because I appreciate there are a lot of different things that people are going to be talking about. One issue that when I've been on the doorsteps, they talk about immigration. It's not a devolved issue. I know it's Reform's big flag flyer at the moment. Illegal immigration is a problem, regardless of which part of the country you come from. But it is not something that the Welsh Parliament has any jurisdiction over. And I think it's really important for the public to remember that, particularly when it comes to Poland.
I'll come to you, Stephen, in just a second. Clear, though, immigration not devolved, but it is high on people's priorities, according to what we've been told.
It is, and, every country needs to be able to control its borders. Of course it has to, but we have to do that in a compassionate and responsible way that reflects, the level of crisis that many legitimate people coming to this country are facing, and I think that some of the narrative that's been developed, painting everyone with the same sort of brushes is unfortunate, to be kind. But I think it's health and it's the cost of living. Those are the two big ticket issues where the Senedd actually can do something about them. And we've already started rolling out some of our policies, and we will continue to do that over the coming months.
As you both say, health, cost of living, the economy, as you say, yes, all high up there with the Welsh public. We've just reflected there on immigration. How much should it really be being talked about in the Senedd election, Stephen? It isn't a devolved issue, as we've said.
It is a fact, I've knocked a lot of doors recently in Monmouthshire, in Carmarthenshire, Cardiff, Barmouth. It is a huge issue. And the Welsh Government's Nation of Sanctuary programme is very controversial. It's very expensive. So even though it's not a devolved issue...
Welcoming people is controversial.
And 80% of those supported by the Nation of Sanctuary actually were Ukrainian people coming over.
I know there's got the issue of the Ukraine, but the concept that we will say to the world that whatever your circumstances, you're welcome to come to Wales is problematic. We've already spent about 55 million on it. I know it's an estimate, but we're confident on an estimate. We will end that.
Wales isn't a welcoming nation. From Reform UK's point of view, Wales isn't a welcoming nation.
It's about treating those people who
not
do
at all.
come to
We're
Wales
a very
with the
welcoming
dignity they
nation,
deserve.
but to have a policy which actively encourages people from other countries into the UK to come to Wales, which is costing a lot of money which could be spent on other things, such as public services, is not acceptable, and we will end it.
You've swallowed a Farage fantasy pill. Honest to God, you're making this up. I mean, what about the people from Ukraine then? Should they not have been supported? Because they were supported.
So
you're happy with that because of the nation of sanctuary?
Farage,
because that's what that
Farage fantasy pill perhaps is the line of the evening.
This is part.
I'm going to bring you in.
This is part of what we call Plaid Labour. The Uni Party, Plaid Labour, nation of sanctuary.
I'm breaking it up. I've got to bring in Hugh. Bear with me, Stephen.
There's an example of it.
Wow. Amazing.
Hugh Irranca-Davies, you've got to calm things down in the studio here. Labour at both ends of the M4 are struggling. We're looking forward to the future. Surely we're going to see cracks emerging, aren't we? Because both ends are under pressure. Something's got to give.
No, I don't think we need cracks emerging. We actually need both the UK Labour government and Welsh Labour focusing on the bread and butter issues that are important to people. So when we look at priorities going ahead, before we look at manifesto pledges and all the development that's going on there for the future offer, it's delivering on what we can do now. And that does mean continuing to actually build the homes. And those homes, by the way, being built at the moment, mean that there are people sitting in JCBs, laying bricks, young people doing apprentices. It is making the most now of the £450 million that we've had from the UK Labour government to actually invest in transport. We were left through all those years of austerity with hardly a penny piece coming into Wales to invest in our transport infrastructure. We've now got it, so we get on with that. But can I just say one thing in terms of the nation of sanctuary and this mythology that Reform perpetuate about it? It's absolutely right that every country has good control of its borders, a good migration policy, but a nation of sanctuary that actually protects, as Llyr was saying, people who come here fleeing death and persecution in the Ukraine or Afghanistan and so on, is a country that I'm going to
have to continue this conversation as the lights go down because we're just out of time. But thank you very much for coming back on that point that we were talking about in the studio. Hugh, thank you very much. And that is it for tonight's a fiery discussion as ever. The latest is on our website, itv.com/Wales. Good night.